Hi, I'm Storey with Bright Agrotech, and this morning I'm going to talk a little bit about pumps, head height, and how to figure out what size of a pump you need for your system. So lots of folks have questions about what size of a pump they're going to need for their system, and there's a few different variables you have to take into account to make that determination. Almost all pumps have a gallons per hour rating, and that just basically describes how many gallons of water that pump will move every single hour. However, that gallon per hour rating isn't always the only measurement you need. You also need to understand how efficient that pump is at different heights, because almost everyone is moving water up. So before we get started talking about pumps, efficiency, gallons per hour, all of that mumbo jumbo, you need to know how much water you need to turn over in your system every hour or 2 hours. So to know how much water you need to move, you need to know what's recommended. And I recommend that if you're a hobby grower, that you're turning over all of your system volume at least once every 2 hours. So there's a lot of flexibility there. You don't have to hit the nail right on the head, but that's a really good starting point for most hobby growers. Alright, so to know what kind of volumes we need to move with our pump, then we need to know how much water we're actually moving on an hourly basis. So if we use that recommendation, and we've got a 100-gallon system, we know we need to be moving at least 50 gallons per hour in order to move the entire system volume, turn it over once every 2 hours, right? So we need a 50 GPH pump. Minimum. So this is basically the minimum number we're going to start with. However, this can be a little misleading because a lot of people are moving their water up. Even if you're operating an IBC system, you're still moving water up usually about 2 feet. So we need to be delivering 50 gallons per hour at 2 feet of head height. Okay? Now head height just basically describes the difference in height between the top of your grow bed, okay, and the top of your water in your tank. This is head height. Now figuring out whether or not your pump can deliver 50 gallons per hour at 2 feet of head height isn't always a simple task, because a lot of different pumps have a lot of different efficiencies, and it's not always a linear relationship between gallons per hour and head height, so it's not a straight line. When you're trying to figure this out, you're going to have to either go to the manufacturer, or you're going to have to try and find the information somewhere that tells you what the gallon per hour rating is at different head heights. Alright, so one way that you can do this determination is to either talk to the manufacturer or look at the ratings on this particular pump. And they'll almost always show you what the head height and gallon per hour rating is using a very simple chart. Usually it'll look something like this. This is head height in feet, and this is volume in gallons per hour. Okay, and so what it will look like is at 0 feet head height, we're going to have 50 gallons per hour right there. Okay, but what it's going to look like is a line that looks something like that, depending on who made the pump, how the pump is made, the efficiencies of the pump. And we can actually use this rating. Let's say this is a head height of 4 feet. So we can use this rating to figure out what our efficiency is at a head height of 2 feet for our hypothetical little system here. So using this chart, we can figure out that at about 2 feet we're looking at about 30 gallons per hour. So we know that this particular pump we were looking at isn't sufficient. Now there might be another pump, okay, that has an efficiency that maybe looks something like that. And if we look at this pump then at a head height of 2 feet, we're maybe falling in at 55 gallons per hour, something like that. So we know that pump number 2 is going to be sufficient to meet our needs for our little hypothetical system here. Alright, so as an example of this, I have here one of our little submersible pumps that we use in our spring systems, and on this pump comes a little chart. And this particular company, Active Aqua, they make a number of different sizes of pumps. but basically they have exactly this chart that I was showing you here with all of these different pump ratings. So this allows you to basically look at the different pumps and see what they're going to be able to do volume-wise at certain head heights. And remembering that we need to turn over our entire system volume, we can always go back to that recommendation and figure out what kind of volumes we're actually looking at. So there's two last things that I want to leave you with before we wrap this video up. The first thing is that recommendation to turn over your entire system volume once within every 2 hours, that's just a recommendation, okay? So you can go slower than that, you can go faster than that, and you're probably not going to hurt anything. Each system varies to some extent depending on the design and the media and the plumbing and all of these different factors. So just keep an eye on your system and make sure you're exchanging it fast enough to get good oxygen, to maintain good dissolved oxygen in your system, and to just make sure that you're not ending up with any anaerobic zones in your grow beds or whatever you're using. The second big thing to remember is that there's a certain loss of efficiency. So these are kind of pure values. They don't take into account running it through, say, 20 or 30 feet of hose, something like that. And there's going to be a loss of efficiency. And that, you know, you can do those efficiency calculations and figure out how much efficiency you're losing on that volume rating. But, you know, I typically just kind of eyeball it on different projects because I don't want to sit down and go through all of the math. So I usually calculate in somewhere between a 15% and a 30% loss in efficiency, depending on the type of plumbing I'm using. So it might behoove you to just calculate in, say, a 30% efficiency lost on this rating, just to make sure that you're falling within the right parameters. Alright, so I hope this video is helpful to you if you're trying to figure out how to size a pump for your system. Again, I'm Nate Storey with Bright Agrotech, and if you enjoy our videos or if they're helpful to you, please subscribe, and feel free to make suggestions on more topics in the future. Also, please check out our vertical food blog. We typically do a transcript or we do a blog post related to each video that we post online. All of the light that isn't being used by good saleable plants on the front side is reflected to good saleable plants on the other towers on the front side.